All right, everybody, welcome back to Money Made Simple. We've got a topic today that we're going to spend some time on. We're titling the episode Suddenly Single. So we want to spend some time talking about the things that you need to maybe consider if you are finding yourself to be suddenly single. So maybe you lost a spouse. We'll go through, a few different things to keep in mind, some pointers that we have and some experience that our group has picked up through the years of doing this. As always, I'm joined by my dad. So, Dad, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Nick. Thanks. Hey, happy late Easter. Had a
Late
great
Easter.
time with Charlotte and watching her dance in her Easter dress. So
Yeah.
always, it's always great. So,
Yeah. She was cute. Hey, I mentioned this earlier, but I looked up some fun facts. We're right in the middle of allergy season, and so all day at Easter, my nose was running, my eyes were itching. So I just, as we do, I was on Chat GPT or Claude or one of those, and I was like, just give me some interesting facts on allergies. And so what I found out was allergies have an $18 billion impact on the US economy. So $18 billion per year just from allergies. And that comes from, prescriptions, medication, treatment, but it also comes from the effect on the labor of people. So one stat in there was 4 million days are missed per year of work
wow.
due to allergies. And people who do go to work that suffer from allergies have a 21% drop in productivity when they're there. So, anyways, I just thought that was kind of interesting. I've never,
You know, it's funny, Nick. I think I might have told you this story before. When I started in this industry, I didn't come from great background, and one of the first times I sat in a hospital, I was working in hospitals, right, in the hospital setting, and my mentor pulled me aside and she says, I have 3 tips for you to grow. And one of them was, wear t-shirts when you wear a suit. One was, put gel in your hair. But the one that she said was, you have to take some allergy medicine because nobody's going to listen to you if you keep sniffling while you're trying to talk to them. So,
yeah.
and
You might even be able to
that's
hear
a
it in my,
shout out to Elaine Hoffman, so. Yeah.
yeah. Every time this year I start to get allergies again, and I'm like, man, what is going on? I can't figure out why I'm got a runny nose and all that. And then I'm like, oh yeah, it's allergy season. So,
Yeah.
anyways, on that note, we want to dive into the podcast here. So, like I said, we'll spend some time talking about, really two people who have recently lost a spouse, or even if you haven't lost a spouse, we want to spend some time together talking about things that you should be thinking of in anticipation of, at some point, all of us will pass away, and so. These aren't fun or easy conversations to have, but we think some planning ahead of time can really save some stress down the road. So that's what we'll spend some time on today. Dad, I know this is a real important topic to you personally. So yeah, why don't you just spend some time?
Yeah, we chose the title of the podcast with intention. It's Suddenly Single When Bad Things Happen to Good People. I've been doing this 38 years, almost 4 decades, and I've been very, very fortunate that I have a lot of great clients that have stayed with me for the years. And so the downside of that is I am there when they lose their spouse, and it is a grieving time, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. But just from a personal standpoint, Nick, I mean, you know this, your great grandma, my grandma, lived through 2 spouses. My grandfather died when he was 65 and left my grandmother alone. And again, my grandfather ran a business. He had all his stuff in order, but all of a sudden my grandma was lost in the sense that she didn't know what she had and where her next where the next monthly income was going to come from. She really didn't know. Fortunately, my mom stepped up. Your grandma stepped up and helped her, and then she met another fella at the bingo hall and ended up marrying him. And he was another doer. He was the one that basically took charge. And so now grandma had another person in her corner. And then he passed away. And again, she was lost. He was very, very, he saw ahead, and he had his trust done so that my grandma could stay in his house because she had no place to live, but she could stay in his house until she passed. But these were 2 men that were very, very bright, very smart. But it was in the tradition of that time. My grandma didn't really care. She just said, okay, he's got it. He's going to take care of it. And that's what we see in with a lot of our clients. And that's what I get scared about. I know a lot of spouses want to take charge, and we'll talk a little more about it. And that's where I get scared about the other ones. I get the ones that don't want any interest in it, and I get it, but we want to talk a little bit about that. So, yeah.
Sure. So the first topic that we want to talk about is the financial leader of the family. So at this point, both spouses are alive. Typically, in most relationships that we're seeing, there's one spouse that really takes charge as it relates to the finances of the family. The other spouse, whether it's just a division of labor, or maybe they don't feel super knowledgeable in things finances, or they just don't have any interest at all, right? Perfectly smart, qualified people, but it's just not their forte. It's just not what they do. So in that scenario where you've got the financial leader and then you have the spouse who's maybe secondary to the finances, I mean that's a role that you play currently. And then of course, as me and my siblings were growing up, you were always the financial leader of our family. So what types of things is a financial leader in a family doing? Like what sorts of things are going to be missing if that person passes away,
Yeah,
I guess?
Nick, the book that I wrote, The Decision Decade, this is one of the chapters I actually spend time on, is who the financial leader of the family is. And that financial leader, to answer your question, in our family, right, it was me. I was the one that was setting up the savings programs. Not that mom didn't want to save, but mom had no interest in that. I was the one setting up the savings programs. I was the one that made sure the insurance was in place. All types of insurance, the health insurance, the life insurance, disability insurance, long-term care insurance, or homeowners insurance, all kinds of insurance. I took care of that. I took care of paying all the bills. Making sure that we had all the mortgages paid, the credit cards paid. I'm the one who took out the HELOCs when we were trying to get our backyard done. I took care of all of that. Mom, your mom, she trusted me. She knew that I knew what I was doing, so she had no interest in it. And that's very typical. And it's not always to your point, it's not always the man who's the financial leader in the family. It's a lot of times the women. Your grandma passed away, on mom's side. She was the financial leader in that family, and grandpa, Tata, was kind of lost financially for a little bit. So it's not always the man, but traditional. If you think about it, Nick, men have gone to work and women have stayed with the family and maintained the domestic side of the family, and there's nothing wrong with that. But one of the things that we really preach is that you need to have a date once a year, and mom and I do this, right, where I go over our what we call financial inventory, where we talk about, here's what we have. If I'm gone, you need to know where to go. Here's who you need to talk to, but here's what you have. Here's the income that's going to stay in place and things like that. And I would encourage everybody to do that. That's a big deal. Whether you want to know about it or not, you still need to be aware. So,
Yeah. I think about here in our household with my wife and our daughter, that just other things that I'm doing. I mean, I'm thinking, paying, like you said, paying the mortgage, but also doing taxes every year. So understanding like which tax documents should I be collecting? Like where are those even coming from? Right. So there's all sorts of moving parts that the financial leader of the household just kind of naturally has picked up through the years, and they just know what to expect. And so if that person passes away, there's a big void there as far as making sure that train can keep moving, so to say. So okay, so let's say now the financial leader of the family has passed away. I mean, that's a really tough emotional time. I've been with our group, I think 7 or 8 years at this point, and like you
Nick,
mentioned,
let's back up just a minute, okay?
yeah,
If 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 you realize that, this is to our listeners, right, our viewers, if you realize you're not the financial leader of the house, what would you encourage that person to do?
yeah, I would say first and foremost, like what you mentioned there is just ask questions to have a general sense of what are all the mechanics behind this ship of ours that is our financial life. So just generally, where are our bank accounts held? Where is your 401k at work? Who is the person that files our taxes for us? So just, starting to ask questions just to get a somewhat of a lay of the land as far as who the players are, where the accounts are, all the things that you need to know. I think it really it, somebody needs to step up in the relationship at home, whether it's the person who is the financial leader saying, hey, non-financial leader, you are going to know these things, or if you're the person who is secondary in the family's financial picture, you should step up and ask the questions. That conversation just has to be had. So that would be the first thing, is just have the conversations. And I think a great way to do that, like you said, is have that once per year date where you just talk money and just know where everything is. I think that would be the first thing that I would do. And then secondarily from there, if you find some interest in it, yeah, give your 2 cents or ask deeper questions. I think you can always follow up, but the first thing is you got to know just a basic level of who's who, where are the accounts, and who do I call. I think those would
Yeah.
be the things to
When
know.
when you were growing up, right? I would come home from work, and mom would tell me things that happened throughout the day. And usually it revolved around you guys, the kids. But she talked about other things, a lot of things that honestly I didn't care about. I didn't care that the gardener came and did such and such to the garden. I really didn't care about that. But she told me anyway. And that's what to your point, that's what I would say, is that the financial leader, even though the other one may not want to know this, you need to tell them anyway, right? It's
Yeah,
like, I don't care about gardening. I have no interest in what plants are being planted and everything else. But when mom takes me out to the garden and shows me and says, hey, smell this chocolate, whatever that flower is, right?
yeah,
Smell this. I take an interest because it's important to her. So
yeah,
just like the money pot side is important to you, I know your wife would take an interest and listen to it, even though she may not be interested.
sure,
So
sure.
I'm very adamant about this. I just don't want to fluff over this because this is so important. We see so many folks coming in here after the tragedy happens and they're lost, and we'll get into that. Nick, we have a client which you probably know, who came in and said, I mean, she came in by herself and she wanted to do a financial plan, and her point was, my husband knows all this stuff. I know he knows this stuff. I trust him. What I need you to do, Mike, is educate me about what we have. So that was fine. And we helped with that. But honestly, that should be happening at home first, if that makes sense, right?
Sure.
So
Yeah, I think something that we often will tell our clients is we do our best to simplify the concepts down to a point where they don't need us anymore, right? If they're in a room by themselves, they can explain what's happening with their investments and their insurance and their estate planning, everything that goes into a financial plan. We want to simplify that down to a point where they can explain it to somebody else and they don't need us, is kind of our joke. Um, my wife, I know she watches this, and she'll think this is funny. I'm assuming I quiz her all the time on what she has. So, right, we did a Roth conversion. I think that I mentioned at some point before. We did a rollover of a 401k into an IRA and all sorts of different things. And I'll quiz her because it's important to me that she knows what she has, because if I'm not there, right, she needs to know what's going on. And so if you're the financial leader of the house and maybe your spouse isn't super interested in what's going on, make it a game. Just every once in a while, bring it up. Just in between those 1 year date nights that you have where you're going to talk finances, just make it fun, because I think all of those. I know that my wife nowadays could tell you what a Roth IRA is, and that's because we had those conversations a lot. So, that's the whole point there. Anything else that you've got on
yeah,
that?
the elephant in the room is we are all going to die someday. And that's why these conversations are hard to have, because the spouse doesn't want to think about you not being there,
Hmm.
right? But we have to have these conversations. So
Sure. Yeah, and our second topic is just kind of going through when somebody does pass away. That's a really, really hard time. It's a super fragile time. It's unbelievably overwhelming. And while I personally have not lost my spouse, I have had enough conversations with people to where I see the the hurt that comes from that and the pain. And so it's a really tough time. And so if the first time that you're learning about your family's finances is after your spouse has passed away, that's a really, really tough position to be in. And so that's why we're being so firm on you need to have these conversations beforehand. Let's maybe put ourselves into the position of we are someone who has now lost our spouse and we are not the financial leader of the family. So where do you start, right? There's lots of different things going on that you need to take into account. And then also you have your whole financial picture that's kind of off to the side, and you need to figure out where to start. So if you haven't done any planning, Dad, and you find yourself suddenly single, where would you even start?
Well, we get these calls, right, Nick? He passed away, last week, and I'm lost. I'm not sure what to do. The first thing I would say is take time to grieve. I mean, there's nothing there's unless we have an income challenge, and that's the first question if somebody passes away. That's the first question I'll ask them after we give our condolences is, how much do you have in the bank right now? Do you know where your income's coming from? And if they say, yeah, we've got a substantial amount in the bank, or they're fine from that way, I said, okay, then let's just slow down. Let's just slow down. As long as you've got income that you can, for final expenses and things like that, let's just take time to grieve. Take time with the family. I'm always here. I'm not going anywhere. I know you're going to be okay, Jane or Joe. I know you're going to be okay. But right now, it's a time to grieve. And I think that a lot of times people will get that call and they'll be frantic. They think they have to do something right now. I mean, you don't have to file taxes or death taxes for at least 9 months after they've passed. You can roll over your retirement accounts 3 or 4 years later. You don't have to rush anything. I think, Nick, you said something. First, let's simplify. Let's simplify everything, right?
Yeah. The saying that I heard once was, in the first year, if you find yourself now single, the first thing to do is to stabilize and then you optimize. So the first thing is you just got to make sure that all the holes are patched, right? That you're okay. You got to work through that grief. And then you can move on to some of those more complex planning ideas rather. There's still things that you need to do in that first year. So you can't be just totally passive. There are things that you need to do, but the point is we don't need to necessarily be selling a house in the first 12 months. That's something that happens all the time where it's a natural reaction of, I need to move out. I'm going to sell the house, things like that. They don't need to be decided on right away. I think
when we get past the grieving, Nick, I mean, and they get ready to sit down, and honestly, a lot of times that's 3 to 6 months later. And when they do sit down, they might be bringing their kids in, which is totally fine.
Yeah.
They need to bring in a support team around them to help them with this if they have it. But you're right. You don't want to make major decisions, within three months after losing your significant other. Sometimes, this person's been in your life for 40, 50 years, so you need to just slow down and take time to remember. So
sure. So just going back to putting myself in that position of I'm now finding myself single, I think one of the first questions that I would probably be asking is what do we even have? And so right off the top of my head, the best thing that you can do is just gather whatever you can. So get all the documents that you can. Some of them might be important, some of them might not be super important, but just gather everything you can. So specifically, you're going to be looking for bank account statements, retirement account statements, pension benefits from work, your estate documents, your tax return is really important. So this was something that we were going to mention here. You can find out a lot about your financial life by looking at a tax return. So maybe there's other high yield savings accounts that are paying interest. All of that would be reflected on your tax return. So that's something really important to gather. Life insurance policy statements, disability. Well, a disability might not make sense unless you are continuing disability coverage for yourself. Social Security estimates, right? Lots of different documents. I mean, what else should somebody be looking for if they're trying to compile their documents together? Anything that I missed?
Well, I think you covered it. I mean, one of the things that the early things you have to figure out is where is your income coming from, right? Some of the income streams that you and your spouse had will continue exactly like they are. Some will be cut in half, Social Security perhaps, and then some will be eliminated altogether, like a public pension or a private pension that we took a single life only, or an annuity that was a single life only. So you have to look at your income streams and figure out what were you living on as a couple. Now, what are you going to be living on as a single person, and is that enough? And then that's where we're filling in the gaps and helping. So
Sure. You mentioned Social Security there. So a something just to keep in mind is if your spouse is collecting Social Security and they pass away, you want to make sure that you stop receiving that income, or if Social Security keeps sending that to you, just kind of earmark it aside in your checking account, because or savings account. Be- yeah, because they're going to come back for that. So if that's cash that you, right, are receiving for a few months after your spouse dies and you spend it, you're going to get a bill from the Social Security Administration wanting that money back. So I think that's really important. Typically, funeral homes will notify the Social Security Administration when someone passes away. So typically those payments will stop, but if they don't, just keep that in mind. Okay, second question that I might be asking myself if I was in that position was, what do I need to do right now? So right off the bat, immediate action items that really should happen pretty quickly is one, if your spouse is working, you should probably notify the employer pretty quickly so that they know. Um, Again, contacting the Social Security Administration, typically that's done through the funeral home. Um, I mean, what else on there for right off the bat?
well, just from an income standpoint, you got to contact the pensions if they have a pension, let them know that they passed. Social Security is going to have a small small death benefit. The pension might have a death benefit, so a part of that. Life insurance, you're going to want to when you go to the funeral home, typically that's when you're getting your death certificates. So you're going to want to make sure you have 3 or 4 at least original death certificates, because some companies are going to require originals and some will take copies. And you'll want to use those when you're trying to claim the life insurance benefits that you might have. We've had situations where clients have come in and their spouse has passed and they have a huge debt now, and the debt might be from care that the spouse had before they passed. Maybe they had cancer and they were battling cancer all this time, or they were in hospice for a while. But so they might have expenses that have piled up, and that can become overwhelming too. So if you're feeling overwhelmed again, once the grieving is over, I think you need to sit down and kind of take a quick inventory of what you have. That's the biggest thing. And you can't do this by yourself. You can't do it alone. I mean, that you're going to fall deeper and deeper into depression. So you've got to have help around.
Something else important to do that I would certainly do is within the first maybe 2 weeks, I would notify all of the important players in your financial world. So specifically, I'm talking about your estate attorney, your tax person, your financial advisor, maybe even a mortgage broker, because all these people I mean, this is how we work. If we find out that somebody's passed away, the whole team gets to work, because we know that there's things that we're going to have to do. This isn't the first time that we've gone through this before. And so, like a well-oiled machine, right, we can start to do some of this work for you on in the background just by letting us know. And so I would say, pretty quickly, if you can, let these different players know, because they're going to be able to get to work for you, and it's going to make your life not easier, but the process will be smoother as you move forward and do the different things that you need to do.
Yeah, one of the things just to mention that we do is we have an inventory. We use something called a bubble chart, and we have an inventory of everything they have. And a lot of our clients have taken that bubble chart and they just have it at their home. And so that if one of them passes away, they can pull up this one pager that here's what I have. And then they usually bring that into our office and say, this is what I know that he had. And I may not have been involved as I should have been, but this is what I have. And then we can go through each item and make sure that they're going to be clear. So
Yeah. So the third question I'd probably ask myself is, am I going to be okay in the long term? So, right, first question, what do we even have? Secondly, what do I need to do right now? And then third, am I going to be okay? So we talked about income right? At the end of the day, financially, what it comes down to is, do we have enough money to pay for everything that we need to pay for? And sure, there's lots of other components to that when we talk about financial planning, but just to answer that simple question, will I be okay? It's going to come down to your income versus your expenses. So, you want to make sure that you have an understanding of your income, what your recurring expenses are for the long term. We talk about our sleep well at night fund, so having cash at the bank. When you get over age 59 and a half, right? Some folks, they don't like keeping a lot of cash in the bank because they want it invested, or they have it in retirement accounts. When they're over 59 and a half, you can access those retirement account funds. So there's a little bit more flexibility there. But I think having some cash at the bank is really important, even if you are over age 59 and a half, because if a spouse does pass away, right, long term, the question is, will I be okay? But in the short term, it doesn't feel like you're going to be okay. But having some cash at the bank, meaning that you can cut checks to the people that need to get paid, and you can pay for your expenses, I think that will at least help alleviate some of that tension that you're feeling, or that stress from losing the spouse. So on the question of will I be okay, I mean, what can people do to answer that question for themselves
It's
if they
hard.
find
I
themselves
mean,
alone?
yeah, I mean, it's hard. You hit it. We should have a good amount of money in the bank in cash, or something safe that's easily accessible, um, to them. But am I, what do I do now? What do I do in 6 months? What do I do in 2 years? That's another way to kind of look at it, right?
Mhm.
What do you do now? You just take an inventory and you make sure that you got enough money to pay the bills and funeral expenses and things like that. In 6 months, that's where you're going to, like, okay, now I need to look at filing a final tax return. I got to look at, positioning my assets the right way. Now that I'm a single person, now I know what my income is. Now 2 years from now, what do I do? Well, am I going to stay in this house? Do I want to move closer to the kids? Those are all real. Now you're into financial planning 101 with just a single person, right? It's just like you said, you got to simplify and then you can optimize, but it's got to take one step at a time. So
Yeah. So another question, what changes and what stays the same? So there's a whole lot that's going to change, and there's a whole lot that's going to stay the same. I think, just to go through a few of these items, making sure that beneficiaries get updated. So that's really, really, really important, and people don't always think to do that. So again, another reason why you need to be calling your trusted contacts, because your financial advisor, for example, will update your beneficiaries. That's, they're going to ask you, who do you want to list as beneficiaries, to make sure that gets done. You might need to retitle accounts. You might need to talk to your state attorney to redo the estate plan if that applies. I think it's one thing that I've suggested before is have your CPA, your attorney, and your financial advisor have a meeting, right? An hour-long Zoom call. It's easier than
yes,
ever to access people, but have those people talking to each other. That way, what does change can be handled, a lot of it for you, and those people can work together to get everything done. So, anything to add on that one?
no, that's really good. That's
Okay.
good. Yeah.
And then the last question here, what should I not do? I think we said it, right? In the first year, don't make any huge drastic changes to your financial world. You've got a lot of things going on, and you're focusing on that grieving and remembering the person that you lost. And so, you know, cashing out big 401ks or IRAs, right? That all becomes taxable. So that sometimes people will be inclined to do that. So typically it doesn't make sense to do that. Yeah, what should you not do is basically too much. Let yourself grieve, get your trusted contacts involved, and take it from there.
But you should also not put your head in the sand and not do anything. I mean, we've seen countless stories where one spouse has passed away and the other one has just left all the retirement accounts where they were. And one of two things happen: required minimum distributions don't get taken out, and now you got huge penalties and tax problems that you got to take care of. Or two, you pass away and there's no secondary beneficiary, then the money goes to the state. So you have to take charge. You eventually have to take charge. And if you have children, I'm sure they're going to push you along. But if you're by yourself, which we have a situation now where she's passed away and he survived, and now he's never changed anything over to his name. He never taken required minimum distributions out. And now he's in a bit of a challenge because he's bedridden and they have no kids. So that's a horror story of just not doing anything and grieving too long, right? You can grieve too long without taking action. So,
Yeah. Okay. And so for those folks who haven't lost a spouse, right, they're still married, both are still alive, but they haven't done any sort of planning yet. For those folks, what's the best thing that they can do?
I don't care who you are. You should have a financial advisor. You should have somebody you're bouncing ideas off. And maybe I'm preaching to the choir because we have a lot of clients that listen to this. If a lot of folks know what I've said this so many times, a lot of folks know what they're doing, but having a second opinion certainly doesn't hurt. Having a third voice, a third player in the family in case one of them goes is almost as important as that. Because again, Nick, Mom and I have a financial advisor. I know what I'm doing. I'm pretty good. You are a financial advisor. You know what you're doing. But we have hired a financial advisor because Mom trusts this person to take care of everything for her. She doesn't want to know. And that's the way a lot of spouses just don't want to know this stuff. And even though we try and we're going to you and I are going to sit here and preach and say it's not going to happen. A lot of folks aren't going to take our advice on this, and the spouses don't want to know. But having that third person who knows your situation, knows what both of your goals and dreams are, and then can act on them, whether it's both of you or just one of you still here, that's its weight in gold. I mean, that's what I would tell everybody is share your story, share your dreams, share your goals, not just with each other, but with somebody else. Because guess what? That also makes those goals and dreams more attainable because now you got somebody that's kind of pushing you along with it too. So
yeah, just as you're saying that, I'm thinking we'll have, from time to time, it's a pretty common thing. We'll have a new couple come in, and the husband or the wife, whoever takes charge, they've done a lot of work, and it's almost like a pride thing where they're like, I've got this, I do a good job. I don't need advice from a financial advisor's office. And our response to that is, yeah, you have done a great job. It's not that you haven't done a good job. It's we're worried for your spouse who doesn't know what a great job you've done. And if you're not here anymore, what are they going to do? Right. So, yeah, I think just get somebody else involved would be the takeaway there. Make sure somebody else knows your story so that you're making life as easy as possible for the surviving spouse to get through everything that they're going to have to get through when you're not here anymore.
Yeah, 38 years doing this, we've seen a lot of good stuff and we've seen a lot of bad stuff. But just my experience alone tells you should sit down with somebody. They say it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert. Well, I think I've got 70 or 80,000 hours at this point. So might as well ask me questions. So
Sure. Anything else that you've got to add here in closing?
I think that's it. I think this podcast might have went longer than the other ones, but this is very this subject hits home with me so much. I mean, Nick, in the last 3 months, we've had 4 or 5 really good people pass away. I mean, people that I've known for so long, and when we get that call, it hurts. It hurts. It doesn't hurt as much to us as it does the spouse and the family. I know that, but it hurts us. And that's why my whole team steps up. I mean, we go full bore into making sure that we take care of as much as we can for that spouse. And good grief. I mean, we can go on and on with endorsements on how we've taken care of people from that, because that's where we shine. I really believe that. That's where we shine, where we come out and we say, yeah, they can't do this right now. We need to take charge. We need to do this for them. So
yeah, at the end of the day,
that's why I'm pretty passionate about this stuff.
Sure. At the end of the day, I feel like this career, it's about service. It's about serving other people and helping them get from where they are to where they want to be. And so there's lots of roadblocks that pop up, as the years go through. But yeah, I know our team takes a ton of pride in being able to serve others, especially in times where they really need that help. So
Yeah.
yeah, just
We
echoing what
didn't
you're
hit
saying.
on divorce, but real quick, there's a quick difference between divorce and widows, and I was thinking about this, and it's kind of sad. When a spouse passes away, um, it's no one's fault, right? You're not pushing the blame on anybody. It's again, a bad thing happened to a good person and they passed away, and now you've got family involved. That's typically what happens. Yeah, you'll have an attorney involved, an accountant involved, but you really have family involved. When two people go through a divorce, it's worse, isn't it, Nick? I mean, because now it's blaming each other for one thing. It's not my fault, it's his fault. It's not my fault, it's her fault. So you have a lot of that going on. Now you got attorneys involved. Now you're changing lifestyles in the sense that I was planning on retiring when I was 65, but now I had to give half my assets to my spouse. Now I'm pushing out to 75. So it's a different mindset altogether on a divorce where you're suddenly single versus a widow where you're suddenly single. So
Sure.
we can hit on that subject another time, but that's a tough road to bear. We've helped some folks through that too. So.
Sure. Yeah. I think it all boils down to just having somebody there as a backstop, a team or an advisor or something like that that can walk with you through those challenging times. A group that's done that before. So, all right. Well, I think, yeah, we might have gone a little bit long here. I think it was a good conversation though. And as always, guys, if you want a copy of my dad's book, Decision Decade, you can grab that from our website. So feel free to get one of those. It'll go through a lot of basic financial planning concepts that you can use that book to even start those annual kind of financial reviews that you're going to start doing at the house. Give us a call if you have
like I said, there's
questions.
a chapter that talks about this subject in there.
Okay. Yeah. So give us a call if you guys have questions. We're happy to help where we can. This has been the 7th episode, so we'll see what episode 8 has in store. And yeah.
Actually, we know what 8th episode is going to be, and it's going to be about life planning. And what I mean by that is having the conversations with your parents about what's important as far as healthcare, living, paying the bills if you can't pay the bills. So we'll have a guest speaker on that, and that's Celeste Gurley. So I'm looking forward to that podcast. So,
yeah, I am too. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Hey, do us a favor if you've made it this far. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. It would it'd help us a lot. Just kind of get this out to more people. So we've only been doing this for a few episodes now, but if you wouldn't mind doing that for us, it would be greatly appreciated. And on that note, hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next.
And happy tax day in a week.
Yeah, tax day's coming up.
Happy tax day coming up. So we're getting a lot of requests for 1099s right now. So
we're almost
that's
through
where
it.
I'm going, Nick. I got to go pull some 1099s for some couple
Okay.
folks.
Well, good luck. Thank you, everybody.
Right. Thank you.